What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Female Footballers Podcast. This week we have on Enge and Maya Doms to introduce a very new and exciting show that we're producing here at Female Footballers called Beyond the Game. Enge is a former Stanford University captain, a player for the San Diego Wave in the NWSL, and is currently playing at Racing de Strasbourg in France. Maya Doms is also a former Stanford University captain, a former NWSL player for Bay FC, and is currently playing for US Sassuolo Calcio in Italy. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Female Footballers Podcast. I am really excited because I'm joined by Rachel, co-host.
Hi, everybody.
And we are joined by two of our amazing mentors. One of them is also a board member, and you already heard their intro before, but I am just so excited to have on Maya Doms and Sierra Enge today to talk about a very special and important project. They are going to be heading up a new segment of our podcast called Beyond the Game, and we want to talk a little bit about what that is. So welcome, ladies. Thank you guys for being on.
Thanks for having us.
And they're coming to us from far away because Rachel and I are here in California. Sierra, where are you?
I'm in France.
Playing for?
Racing Strasbourg. So I'm in Strasbourg, which is right on the border of France and Germany and very close to Switzerland.
Ooh, very cool. And Maya, newly in
Italy. I play for a club called Sassuolo Calcio. I'm getting used to it still. And it's in the northern center part of Italy near Bologna.
So awesome. So awesome. So Rachel and I started this podcast in, when was it? 21?
I think it was 2021.
Yeah, we were still in COVID. We were talking a lot on Zoom about our organization, and we would get in conversations about what was going on in the women's soccer space. And so we just started recording it. And that's kind of how the start of Female Footballers podcast came to be. And the basis of it is to try to interview people about their soccer journey and the mental side of the game and how it, plays a role in their journey and their experience, and for some people who've retired, how they use those mental skills today in whatever job or role they're playing in. But your guys' podcast is going to be a little bit different, and I'm really excited about it. So why don't you guys introduce what Beyond the Game is and tell us about it?
Yeah, I can start and then give a little background. So basically, Maya and I have played together and separately, and we've played with some really incredible players, people, and just people from all different walks of life. And I think I listen to so many podcasts on all different things, and especially within women's soccer and within sports, so much of it is talking about your career, but focusing in on the highs and focusing in on maybe a couple of tough times. But what we really want to do with this podcast is talk about the things that are kind of unseen within your career. Because I think so often when we look at professional athletes or we look at, top college soccer players, you just see the success and the things that they've done that have been really good. And it looks easy at times, it's, easy and breezy. And I think us, being at Stanford and being in these environments, we know that it's not easy. One of the things that we used to always say at Stanford is the idea of the duck, what was it? The duck syndrome?
It's like floating duck syndrome or something.
Yeah, where above the water you look like you have it all together, and below you're actually frantically swimming. And so I think that's kind of part of the idea of our podcast is really to just kind of get at what's underneath and dive a little bit deeper into that, and really kind of have meaningful conversations about what it's like to feel isolated and alone when you're going through injury, what it's like to doubt yourself when you step into new environments, what it's like to, not play, to get cut, to get benched, all of those things. And even what it's like to step away from the sport, what it's like to have to finish earlier than you want to because your body and because of things that are going on medically. So we're really excited to have these conversations with our friends and people that we care a lot about.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Maya, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, Sierra covered a lot of it. I think it's just kind of a more behind the scenes look of what goes on in a collegiate soccer player's life or a professional soccer player's life. And I think, I mean, me and Sierra have been very honored to play not only with each other but with some players that have become really big soccer stars and some of the best players in the world, and just have gone through just life experiences, not just sharing the field with these people that we're going to bring onto our podcast, I think is going to be really eye opening to the public eye who just sees these players as players and maybe not people. And I think just going to Stanford and the huge network that Stanford has, we're really fortunate to know a lot of people who have gone through so many different experiences, positive and negative. And I think having those maybe fun conversations, but also challenging conversations with these people who maybe had to step away from the game, like Sierra said, or just mentally couldn't handle being on a team at a high level anymore. And even maybe talking to people different um, on different sports teams or even the men's side, I think would be a cool idea too. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I love this idea too, because I think this was originally when we started our podcast was some of the direction we wanted to go in as well. And I think when our purpose sometimes when we started too is just representation and visibility. Like, let's get women in front of young girls so that they see that everybody's path is uniquely different, but we share a lot of similarities in the emotions and the feelings and thoughts that we have behind the scenes, what's going on in our brains while we're playing. I love that you're taking it to this next level of diving even deeper, because I think that we're in a time right now where, as a youth soccer player who's looking up to these collegiate and professional players, they are looking at all the good things. It's highlight reels are a thing for these girls. They're creating, they are only really observing others' highlight reels. They are on social media and they're only seeing, the 30-second clip of the best moment of your soccer career ever. And it's really creating this idea that we're expected as young girls and young players to be perfect and to never make mistakes and to just really always provide those highlight moments. And that's just not realistic at all. And it's so funny how many athletes that we work with in team sessions or one-on-one in our mentorship program who are surprised sometimes to hear our mentors talk about, oh yeah, I've experienced that too, like what they're going through. And it's the facial expressions on these athletes of like, oh, you have? Like, it's awesome to see that light bulb go off, like, I'm not the only one. And even people at the highest level have experienced this, and there's just not a lot of that being spoken about, and some of the bigger podcasts within the soccer space, they're always just hearing more of that, more of the highlights, more of the amazing moments. And so and I want to preface this, you're still going to talk about a lot of those, obviously. But to be super real is, I'm so excited to listen to your guys' interviews, and your network at Stanford is a jumping off point to even the other players you've played with on your respective professional teams in state and out of state. I'm just so excited. So Rach, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think I would just piggyback on we talk a lot about female footballers like normalizing the struggle, and that, suffering is definitely something that we don't want and may need clinical, help in that realm. But the struggle in the middle is real and is normal, like, not. And I think that's what these stories are going to really tell, is that no, this is really hard. And that doesn't mean, I don't know, I just think highlighting that aspect of the game is really important, especially on the female side. And I think men will learn a lot, particularly male coaches who are coaching, since it is still a male dominated space, the coaching at most levels, but especially at the youth level. And so to hear that these high level players speaking about these things that aren't talked about normally is going to be very powerful. So I'm really excited about that. Like I said, kind of normalizing that struggle zone.
Did this idea kind of spur from, I mean, you guys have a lot of purpose behind your why. So I'd love to hear more about that. But I also just am curious if, like Rachel and I having these side conversations on Zoom during COVID about the state of the women's soccer world, we're like, maybe we should record this. Are you having some of these types of conversations amongst each other with some of your high level friends that are in these, big environments right now, and realizing, gosh, the public could really benefit from listening to this kind of conversation? Is that part of your why, or what is that backstory of why this is important to you?
Yeah, I think honestly, I was while we were kind of talking about this, I was thinking back to my fifth year at Stanford when Maya and I we were both captains, and one thing that we really like talked about with us and then our other co-captain Kennedy Wesley, who we definitely gonna have on our podcast at some point, but was just like, how do we freshman year of college is like, as you guys know, is a really, really tough time. And freshman, sophomore, honestly, like everyone struggles, but I think when you first come in as a freshman, it's really hard. And now that we were kind of in a leadership position, one thing that we really wanted to do was make these freshmen feel like they weren't alone. Because I think when you get there, yes, you have your other freshmen to lean on, but you're like, wow, I have no idea what's going on. I'm kind of getting my butt kicked on the field because I'm stepping into a new environment. I'm navigating like all of these new things, and I feel like everyone who's ahead of me just like has their life figured out and always has had that. And I know that I felt that as a freshman of like, I looked at the seniors and I was like, oh wow, they must have just come in as freshmen and like known what was going on and had it nailed from the second they got here. And me and Maya going through that experience, we were like, okay, we know that this isn't true, and we want to make sure that other people understand that. And so, one thing that we started while we were at Stanford was having these kind of like spotlights, basically, where you could just share a little bit about your journey and like where, some of the things that you've maybe struggled with, or it was very open ended and you could kind of talk about whatever. But, for me as a fifth year, I talked about like redshirting my freshman year and not playing as much the beginning of my college experience, and like really doubting myself and feeling a lack of confidence and kind of growing into a leadership role over time. And I just felt like that was something that was so powerful, and it's always something that I've kind of thought about, because I think every time I get into a new environment, like getting to the pros, I was like, oh wait, like these girls go through bad times too, and like these girls go through times where they're not confident, and these girls that I've looked up to my entire life get pissed off when they don't start a match, and they get pissed off when they miss shots in training. Like they are just like all of us. And I think that, just like you said, we watch these highlight clips and we watch these things, and I feel lucky that I've been able to kind of be in these environments where I can see that, and I can see kind of like the glass crumbling, or the way that I've romanticized it in my mind crumble. But I think that if I had known that at an earlier age, I maybe wouldn't have felt so alone, and kind of like no one else must be thinking this, and no one else must be dealing with it. So I think that's kind of where we really wanted to take it to another level and make it a little bit more accessible to the wider audience, and more young girls, and hopefully even a broader audience than that.
Absolutely, yeah. Maya, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think a big thing is just vulnerability. I don't know, a lot of people don't know how to be vulnerable. They don't know, like, yeah, how to navigate being vulnerable and who to be vulnerable with. And I think, like, there's all of these mindsets that you're taught at such a young age, um like you have to work super hard and don't show anyone any weakness, or like don't show that you're struggling. I feel like that was a big mentality growing up, and it still is a huge mentality that maybe parents are telling their kids. And it's like towing the line between being vulnerable and saying like, okay, like my body does not feel good, I'm mentally struggling, and I need to take a break, or I just need to take a breather, a couple minutes, versus I just need to power through it even if it's going to break me mentally, and I'm going to, like, I'm punishing myself for later. So I think kind of towing the line between being strong and being vulnerable is like a huge topic that needs to be talked about, not needs to be talked about in the soccer world in general. And also I think just like the mental health aspect of the game. I know me and Sierra have experienced it been we have struggled with mental health, and we've also been around people that have struggled with mental health. So I think our unique experiences, and then also maybe asking those questions to the people we have on the podcast will I think who we'll have on the podcast are people we're close enough that they will also be vulnerable, and I can't wait for our viewers to kind of see what our podcast guests have to offer.
Absolutely. I love that too. I love that you're going to destigmatize the vulnerability aspect. I think we travel and work with lots of teams on um, coaching the modern athlete, and we hear back from coaches all the time that players today are soft, and we're often giving reasons why players seem that way. And I think that a lot of them they don't know. I think they're often looking at the youth and they're like, the youth today is just softer, and I think it's like, no, this is happening at every level, and being soft is not a bad thing to be vulnerable. It's they need to be educated on their capacity to handle different situations, and that's needs to be more of a deliberate and consistent conversation within the game, and they're just not being afforded time to discuss it, to experience their feelings, to navigate it. And I think that when you have athletes at your guys' level normalizing that being vulnerable is a part of the game, and that you're seeing it in your everyday training sessions, whether it was in the NWSL or it's in your respective club teams in Italy and France now, I think it's important that they know that that's always there. It's just nobody's talking about it. And if we can actually talk about it and normalize it, then you'll see that it's not youth of today that are soft. It's that everybody is allowed to be vulnerable. And that can actually be a superpower too within the sport. It doesn't need to be a weakness, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm really excited for this. I know that you guys, we always joke at Female Footballers, we have quite a network of amazing mentors and women, and the bulk of them happen to be Cal and Stanford players, which we always laugh about because we're such rivals in college sports. Um, but I think, that speaks to the intention and purpose behind the programs we came from, and the network of people that you at Stanford have been surrounded with, like you said, playing with some of the best people in the world. I'm sure people listening are wondering, like, who is that, and will they be on your podcast? So maybe you can give us a little bit of an inkling into what guests you're hoping to have, and maybe why you chose them, if you want to go into that.
Yeah, Maya, you want to jump in and I'll finish.
Yeah, well, I think we're starting off with a big hitter. Um, we're gonna have Naomi Girma on our podcast as our first guest. We both played with her at Stanford. I played with her for 3 years, and Sierra played with her for 4, I think. So, and yeah, I mean, Sierra and Nay are like best friends, and I'm very lucky to be friends with them as well. And now that we're all in Europe, I think it's kind of fun, and it's easy to record this podcast maybe a little easier because we're on the same time zone. But yeah, I think um, super excited to have Naomi on, and then some maybe future or potential other guests are Katerina Macario, if we could get her to answer her phone, and definitely, I think having Kennedy Wesley on would be fun just because we all captained together at Stanford. And there's so many more that we can definitely have on. So,
Yeah, we really want to just kind of like tap into our network of people that we've played against. Because I think, like Maya said earlier, like when you're around people that you're comfortable with and that you've had shared experience with, it's easier to get a little bit vulnerable a little bit quicker. And so we really want to kind of use that network and use our friends and use our resources. And Cassie, like you said, I think similar to Cal, like these Stanford people that we've been lucky enough to play with and been around are passionate about this kind of stuff and really do want to kind of push the mental side of the game further. So we're really excited to do that. And then I think another thing we were kind of thinking about too, which I'm really excited about, is interviewing also a few people that we went to school with that are no longer playing soccer, um, and talking a little bit about that transition, because that's so hard. And there's such a small percentage of high school athletes that actually play in college, and an even smaller percentage that go to play professionally. And so I'm really excited too about those conversations, because while the names might not be quite as big and alluring, I'm really excited because I think those are going to be very, very helpful for our audience as they just navigate all the different stages of life. And I think it's such a hard transition, and we just don't get to talk about it enough.
Oh, so agree with you. Well, first of all, we're excited for you to have people like Naomi Grima. I'm personally excited because I'm a San Jose girl. So the more San Jose girls we can get on this podcast, the better. But also just, like you said, there's purpose and intention behind their why of why this matters. And what I'm stoked about is that you both and the network of people you're going to have on this show are so they're really making an impact in this space. To have people on talking about the transition out of sport, there are not many conversations like that being held. And I know my husband played in Major League Soccer for 8 years. He retired now over 10 years ago, and there wasn't really an MLSPA where he could go and network and talk about that transition into the business world or whatever it is. But it's also the athletic identity issues that he still struggles with at times. And I think even me as a college player, like Rachel and I are the generation where there was no NWSL. There wasn't opportunity for many of our generation to play unless we were willing to wait 6 years till the WPS started. We didn't have that option. And so when you felt like that was your life's purpose and you didn't get that opportunity, there's still a level of athletic identity and transitioning passions into different ways. And I think nobody really is having those conversations. And I love that you mentioned, Naomi and Katerina are like amazing and super alluring. But I think to me, what's most exciting about your podcast is the level of vulnerability in the conversations that you're going to have. They're very real when those topics are not being spoken about, and you guys are going to bring to light so many different mental health issues and things that come up that are really going to normalize this as a part of the game for younger players, like you said. And I think that's huge because there's really not a lot of the women's soccer podcasts out there are just interviewing the best in the world and talking about all the best things they've ever done. And as much as it's fun to listen to, there's a different purpose here, and I'm just really excited about it. So let's see. It's called Beyond the Game. Do you want to say why? Like, what was the purpose of the name? And yeah. And what are we looking forward to with Naomi's first episode? Is there anything you can tell us about that?
Sneak peek. Yeah, I think Beyond the Game, really, we wanted to just make the title be about what it is, which is we are interested more in what's going on beyond the game. So, for example, like with Naomi, um, she has won a gold medal, which is like incredible and has so many accomplishments to her name. But like, you can go on Wikipedia and see all of that, and you can get that information. And if we ask her, what was it like to win a gold medal? Awesome, so cool, like a dream come true. But we're more interested in things like, what was it like when you tore your ACL after getting invited to your first US national team camp? Like, what were the things going through your head? What was it like when you came into the league as the first draft pick in the NWSL? Like, what were the pressures that you were facing? What were those mental challenges that you were dealing with? Because I think, me and Maya have been so lucky to like be alongside her, and for so much of her career, it just looks like these things are easy, and oh, she just picks up this award and this award and this award, but there's so much beyond that. And so that's really why we wanted to dig into that name and really make our podcast about more than just the accolades and the awards, and what's kind of going on behind the scenes and beyond what's going on the pitch.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's really interesting. Well, one, I love that she's willing to talk about it and that all the players you're going to have come on are willing to talk about it. But two, just the conversation that stems from all of you with your guys' experiences. I think it's just going to be really unique, and I'm excited just to listen and be a listener. I'm sure Rachel, you feel the same way. And all that, like you said, people that are no longer playing. I think there's still you guys have a network of women there and women that you played with even in the NWSL that you could talk to that are And like you said too, Maya, men, like we just because our name is female footballers, our staff is all female. We work with boys. We want to represent their experience as well. So, having conversations around normalizing vulnerability for boys soccer players is just as important. And I'm sure that will come up. And Rachel and I actually will be having some men come on our podcast in the future here soon too. So we're trying to open that door too. So any last things you want to tell our listeners? Where is this going to be accessible? Um, could they find it on your social platform? Like any of that, let us know. Maya, you want to go there?
I have no idea where it's gonna be.
I mean, yeah, well, can we cut this? No, well, we're obviously going to be on our socials, but it's going to just be under the
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, it'll be under our Female Footballers podcast. It's technically a segment. It'll be in a different color, so you'll know which ones to find it on. But they'll be able to find it on your social platforms, right? So if go follow Maya and Sarah on Instagram. Where else are you guys active?
Ooh,
Mainly Instagram for me.
Yeah.
I have not gotten on TikTok. Maya, have you?
I deleted that like a couple months ago. But yeah, I'm sure we'll probably link it in our bios maybe, and then maybe when there's a new episode or something, we'll put it on our story or repost it somehow.
Okay, cool. We're not going to cut that. It's good. I like it. Just kidding. Is there any dream guest if you could have like another? I mean, obviously you're getting like the best female women's soccer player in the world in my book as your first guest, so it's pretty going to be hard to beat that. But if you could have a dream guest come on, is there anybody you would love to interview about what's going on in their brain while they're playing or after? Boy or women or male figure, any sport, like any ideas there? Just putting you on the spot, but that's what's kind of fun about this too.
It's a really good question.
Yeah, that is a hard question.
I'll tell you what I would choose, and this is a really weird choice, but I'm old, and when I was really young, she was on the outs of her career, but it was Michelle Akers,
Mm.
and Michelle Akers for my generation was like the epitome of strength. She looked like a lion. She played very aggressively, and she had some serious physical injuries, especially with concussions and things like that. And so she'd be somebody I'd be very curious about, like, what is her mentality about vulnerability, and like, does she see value in it, and what was going on in her brain as being like a pioneer of the sport. I think that would be super interesting, but maybe old people like me would be the only people that want to listen to that. Who knows? But I mean, you also probably have a network of other athletes at Stanford in different sports you could pull on too, is my guess.
Yeah, I was actually the first. I have like two people that came to mind pretty quickly, and I totally know who Michelle Anchors is, and I like loved. I mean, in the 99ers, like she was like the always just coming on, like winning every important challenge, like just embodying that idea of like push through everything. So yeah, I totally get why that I think that would be really interesting. I think one person that came to mind for me was Sam Mewis, because I watched her when she played at UCLA. Like I would go to those games, and I remember just being, I mean, I'm a midfielder, and so I remember watching her and being like, this girl is so good, and I was always such a fan of her. And I think she had such a tough go with injuries, and obviously now she's like completely built out a new career. But I would love to learn more about that transition in her life, and yeah, just like being away from the game for so long, not really knowing the injuries she had were, I mean, I don't know all the details, but were just like really grueling, and there wasn't a specific timeline. So she's someone that I think would be really interesting to have on. And then the other person, actually, we got to hear speak at Stanford, and he went to Stanford he's a little bit older than us, but Solomon Thomas, he plays in the NFL. I think he plays for the Jets now. I don't actually know, but he has a foundation off the field called the Defensive Line, and they do a lot of like mental health training around suicide and kind of some suicide prevention tools and things that can be helpful within this like collegiate athletics and youth athletics. But one thing that he talks a lot about is like as a male in a um, just like quite a masculine and a sport where it's really all about how can you ignore everything that's going on in your body and just like play no matter what. how it's like okay to be vulnerable and to open up. And I think, like we said with men, it's not as like these conversations just don't seem like they're happening as much. And so I think he could be a really impactful person to be able to speak on that, and would just be someone interesting to interview and within the Stanford network.
Totally. Well, that whole argument of like disassociation versus letting yourself feel what you're feeling and navigating it, that's super interesting. Maya, how about you?
Yeah, I think Sierra's two people are two great, like dream guests. But I was kind of thinking while she was talking, I was thinking of Lauren Holiday, just kind of like what she went through at the end of her career and having a chronic condition, and also thinking about kind of it's really unique to maybe be a professional athlete and also your significant other being a professional athlete and kind of navigating that and kind of sharing experiences and how they kind of dealt with everything maybe together. And then also it just reminds me of like when when do you maybe hang up the boots and kind of start your new chapter in life, whether that's injury, whether that's your love for the game is just not there anymore, or maybe you have you want to start a family. So I think kind of having a guest maybe in that phase of their life would also be cool.
Totally. And I think of like, I mean, Kelly O'Hara is another one that comes up in your Stanford network that her generation, Sam Mewis, her, Tobin Heath, all of them have had sort of career-ending injuries in a way. And there's a whole, I mean, Lauren Holiday, Leslie Gallimore kind of, or sorry, Leslie Osborne, with some of her injury. And I know she came back to play pro, but never back on the national team. And like, there was just how injury plays a role. I'm really excited to hear you guys discuss that with a lot of the athletes that you have on your podcast because nobody's really talking about that. So, um, I'm really excited for this, and we will make sure that we market the most we can with all of this and get it out there. And we're just so excited to have you guys on board under our wings with your podcast, Beyond the Game. You guys should definitely check it out. It is slated to come out soon. And any last things that you need to plug or say? You guys good?
No, listen, share with your friends. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the more like eyes we get on this, the better. So definitely please share, like, comment, all the things. Thank you guys so much for coming on. We can't wait for your podcast, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.